Hello buddy, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing a brand support video. So special thanks to Christoph for the very generous donation. First off, we're going to go over Brand's abilities. We'll talk about some of his strengths, his weaknesses, how he fits into the meta. And then we'll talk about his best pairings, who he's good with, who he's good against. And then we'll transition into talking about the items that are good on him and the runes that are good on him. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started here. So and I have this Google Doc linked in the description if you want to follow along. And then I'll also have timestamps if you just want to jump around to your favorite parts like the runes, items, or whatever part you're most interested in. So I've got a link to the Wikia here. We're going to be looking at the League Wikia for the abilities. Then we'll be looking a little bit at sort of the rune page here, and then finally we'll look some at Loalytics and see what's going on there. We might take a peek at pro builds also, although a lot of top-level players will not be playing brand support that often, so there may not be that much data there, but we can take a peek at it a little bit later. Let's talk about his abilities first. Okay, so why brand? His overall position is, in terms of statistics as of patch 8.9, near the end of 8.9, where we are when I create this video on May the 14th. He is one of the higher ranked AP supports, but he's still a little ways down. I mean, he's 51.4% with like a 6.6 play rate and 8.8 win rate. Now, if we go, that's for Platinum Plus. If we move down the list a little bit here, let's say Silver, where the average person plays in League of Legends, then you'll find that he moves up quite a bit, right? So he's going to have 53.4% in Silver, which makes him the best mainstream statistical support in Silver. So what is this differentiation? Why is he so much better in low elo than high elo, and sort of what's his position in the overall meta? Okay, so where we are right now in terms of the meta, patch 8.8, you're seeing lots of high damage in every position. So we're seeing a lot of assassin type of characters in the jungle. Shaco's still very strong. Kha'Zix is strong. Warwick's not an assassin per se, but he does do quite a bit of damage over time. You're seeing Graves, who might as well be an assassin. So you're just seeing a lot of damage in the jungle. You're seeing in the mid lane a lot of assassins coming into play, like LeBlanc's still pretty popular. Fizz is popular. Zed, Talon, all of that. There's a couple of counter picks to those, kind of the sustained tanky-ish mages with Swain and Vlad and Aurelion Sol. Being pretty, Aurelion Sol obviously doesn't have sustainment. He gets a lot of health. So that's kind of what's going on in the middle. And then top lane, it's pretty much high-scaling fighters. So like Camille, Irelia, Fiora, Darius, that type of stuff. And then in the bot lane, for now, there's a decent diversity of different champions, but Ezreal's really popular, and then just a bunch of like high crit scaling champions. So like your Jinx, your Draven, stuff like that. For the most part, it's gonna be really strong. So Brand is nice. He's a nice option because he's AP damage, and so if you'll notice, a lot of the champions that I mentioned in other lanes are AD. So top lane is almost all AD right now. It's very rare to see AP champions up there unless it's like Singed. Jungle, the only AP jungler is Eve, who's not played that much. That's sort of common. A lot of other champions are AD. And even in the mid lane, we're starting to still see some more ADs. You're seeing Yasuo mid lane, Talon mid lane, Zed mid lane. And so having an AP option is really good if your team wants to run 3 or 4 AD. So that does give him a pretty decent position in this meta. Now, the problem is lots of mobility and assassins are historically not very good for Brand as well, because if you don't land your stun, if they somehow, dodge around your stun or flash it, then you're going to die. So Brand really wants highly organized team fights, right? So that everyone's all clumped up, and then he can bounce his pyroclasm off of people and just get them all to explode on each other. So he really wants team fights. He does not like the Clown Fiesta that much. He's okay at it. If you land your stun on somebody, you can still blow them up. But he really wants people to group up. He doesn't like the sort of split pick meta style that's going on right now, where you have a split pusher, whether it's Irelia or Camille or whatever, and then you have assassins either in the jungle or the mid lane, and you have people, someone split in one lane, you get good vision coverage, then you try to pick off people as they go to stop the split pusher, right, as they're rotating between lanes where your main force is and the split pusher is. So that's kind of the split pick that I'm talking about. So he's not amazing at that, although he's okay. You know, if you catch people out, if they're walking through a bush, you can kill them. What he is very good at is lane domination. So, you know, you can bully people out really easily and zone them out with the threat of your stun, because if you do land your stun in lane, they're probably going to die a lot of times. And he does very well harassing under tower. So if you have an 80 carry that really likes to push, like a Caitlyn, and you get him under tower, then you'll have plenty of opportunities to, you know, throw pillars of flame at him and, you know, get some really good poke damage in there. And that's sort of what distinguishes him from Zyra. And this, you really need to be thinking about Brand versus Zyra when you're choosing Brand and why you're choosing Brand. Because Zyra's the other really popular one. She's harder to play in some respects than Brand is. But the win rate is very similar down in silver. She's, you know, 52%. Brand's 53% with a little bit of change. So he's slightly higher. But the thing with Zyra is her plants allow you to have really good vision and much more consistent poke. Because Brand actually has to land these skill shots. With Zyra, the Q's a lot easier to hit, and even if you miss it, the plant's still going to hit him a couple of times typically. But those plants are most of Zyra's damage, and they aren't very good under tower. So, you know, you can spawn plants and try to harass people under tower, but it's not going to do that much. So Brand is much better at threatening people under tower. And he's much better at potentially like zeroing out and just killing a single target in the lane. So Zyra offers better poke damage, better all-in later on, but and a little bit more consistent, predictable damage. But Brand does offer in the laning phase higher single target damage most of the time, and if everyone clumps up, probably more team fight damage later on at the expense of having a little bit less utility than Zyra. So that's kind of where we are right now. Now, one important thing also when you're harassing as Brand, to get your stun, you have to have a clean shot at them. So you have to have a clean, you know, line for your seer. You can't throw it through minions, whereas someone like Zyra can throw both of her plants through minions, both her Q and her E. So that's one thing as well, is you really want that open shot, and that's why pushing them into towers, Brand, is the strategy that you want most of the time, as long as you're not going to get ganked, so that you get those clean shots with your Q. Brand's also much more of a mana hog than Zyra is. Zyra, especially after the most recent buff, has 15 mana per 5 early, which is massive, and then Brand got a little bit of a buff. I think he has 10 mana per 5 now, so it's decent, but, you know, he has to cast 3 different spells to get his full combo, whereas Zyra really only has to cast 2, and a lot of times just 1 is fine for harassment because her W is free. It doesn't cost anything to land those plants. So it's just interesting. You need to be thinking about when you pick Brand versus Zyra, because those are really the two major choices for AP right now. You do have Fiddlesticks kind of in there somewhere. He's sort of a different conversation, but Brand and Zyra are very similar in many ways. So you have to, you know, think carefully about what you want. So Brand, really strong, like kill threat, really strong under tower, really strong if everyone's grouped up for 5v5 team fights. Zyra, more consistent poke, better vision control and utility sort of in the later game, and then more consistent, higher single damage threat later on. Okay, so Brand, I would say that Brand's probably stronger and offers more kill threat early, and Zyra probably scales a little bit better as the game goes on. But it is debatable. It depends on the game states and what's going on. But what's up with Brand? Why is he one of the more powerful ones? Why are he and Zyra sort of the premier options? Well, he does have pretty good base stats, first of all. He's got 520 health, which is low, but not the lowest out there. He has pretty high base mana, so his spells do cost a lot, but he has pretty respectable base mana. 550 auto attack range, pretty good. Almost 11 mana regen, pretty good. And this 340 move speed is actually really nice. I think Zyra only has... She might be as low as 325. Let me just bring up Zyra since I'm talking about her so much. So I can kind of compare a couple of their things here, because they do get compared a lot. Zyra actually has 342. Okay. At one point in her development, she had 325. So they both have 340. Zyra has a little bit of longer range. Has way better mana regen. A little bit less health. What's Brand's armor? Wow, he has really low armor, actually. So he only has 22 armor. Zyra has 29. Oh, I mean, Zyra's base stats are going to be a lot better than his base stats, but they're still alright. He's pretty mobile. Now, a thing with Brand is he does do percentage-based damage, so he's really good against tanky targets, and historically he has been great against tanks because he offers such high damage, such high percentage-based damage. So pretty much every time you land a spell on somebody, they lose 4% of their max health as magic damage over 4 seconds. Okay, so it kind of burns over time. This is very good with Aerie. Now, people will take Comet on him, and that's okay. But Aerie, you can potentially get multiple ticks of Aerie as well, depending on how high a level you are and what's going on. But kind of like with Teemo and Singed and some of these other picks out there that have historically run Aerie, if you have something that's a damage over time, you know, you have a chance to trigger Aerie multiple times. So that's the case with Brand. I think most people still go Comet on him, but Aerie is an option because you have this sort of dot over time. This also makes him really good with things like Leandries, because Leandries checks every time somebody takes damage, then they end up taking an additional 2 to 4% of their max health. I don't remember, they just changed the Leandries somehow, but it's some percentage of their maximum health. So Leandries is very, very good, and this refreshes the Leandries. They don't stack on top of each other, but it does refresh the Leandries duration. So you get a free 4 seconds of Leandries, and then you get an additional, you know, couple of seconds after this finishes. So very, very good with Leandries for that reason. So it stacks up to 3 times. So it can do a maximum of 12% of their max health over the duration. Okay, and then you get different bonuses if they're already on fire, which all of his abilities put them on fire, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. Now, if you kill an enemy that's on fire, then you get some amount of mana back. This isn't going to matter as much because you're not going to be clearing a lot of minion waves, but if you find yourself in the mid to late game for some reason trying to push out a wave, this will give you back a little bit of mana. So this was something they did a while back to try to give Brand a little more viability in the mid lane, but it's not going to happen because he's too squishy. He doesn't have a lot of mobility. He doesn't have any defensive tools. He's too susceptible to assassins, and his AP scaling is really low compared to a lot of other AP laners out there. So most of his damage, he has really high base damages that do a lot of maximum health percent damage. And so that's what makes him really good as support, and that's something I should have mentioned too with Zyra and Brand. The reason that those two are usually the preferred AP supports is because they don't need a lot of gold to function. Because they have really high base damage. Brand has this percentage max health damage, which has virtually no AP scaling. It's really good with spell penetration, and Zyra's, most of her damage are in her plants, which have really high base damages, have really low AP scaling, and so this means that you can just go spell pen and get a lot of damage out of them really quickly in the game. So if you just go something like Sork Boots plus the Orb that gives you an additional 15 spell pen, you can do that, or you can go Sork Boots into Leandries and get that extra 10% damage and the extra damage over time off the Leandries Eyes of Pain, or whatever it's called these days. So that's why they're so strong, is they don't need a lot of gold. They're not going to get a lot of gold as support mostly, but they do a whole lot of base damage. So this is his part of that formula. Versus if you look at someone else like an Orianna support, she's not going to do as much base damage. She doesn't have any percentage base damage. She doesn't have any pets. She requires AP to really scale later on into the game. And so these champions don't require that. They just get spell penetration. They're immediately really strong. Okay. So yeah, low AP scaling. If you have 100 AP, it's just an extra 1.5% damage on this. But spell penetration, very, very good for those reasons. So if you get 3 stacks on somebody, then they explode after 2 seconds and deal a maximum of 16% at level 9 of their total health, which is a lot. So that's in addition to this. So this 12% still happens over 4 seconds, and they explode at the end of it, you know, for an additional 16%. So that's 28% of their maximum health, potentially, once you get to level 9, right? And even at level 16, that's still going to be 26.5% of their max health. So that's a lot. And that's in addition to the, you know, the base damage that your spells are going to do. So that's where all of that damage comes in. And when it explodes on everybody. So if a bunch of people are standing close together, you know, you could hit 3, 4, maybe even 5 enemies if they're all stuck together off of this. And that's where the really insanity comes in, because if you have 2 people standing next to each other, you trigger Blaze on both of them, this passive with Pyroclasm, like it bounces between them and they're both on fire. They both explode on each other. Then all of a sudden they're taking 12% and then 16% each exploding on each other. So that's 16 plus 16 is 32 plus 12. You know, each one of them is going to be taking 44% of their maximum health, which is a lot. That's a lot of damage. So that's when he starts getting scary, is when you're able to get this passive to blow up on multiple people at the same time. Okay, and then Blaze cannot stack more than once on people who have the explosion marked on them. Okay, so what do these different combos do? Okay, so this is his cheapest spell. It's only 50 mana. Has 1,000 range, which is pretty good range. It's a pretty slender skill shot. It does move pretty quickly, though. It does some decent damage. It only has a 0.55 ratio. But this could be something used as a harass tool. The problem is it has to be a line shot, so you can't have any minions in the way when you try to land this. And that's kind of problematic. But it is the cheapest. This is something in theory that you could just spam at people. And the cooldown goes down as you level it up. Now, if you hit someone who's on fire, then it's going to stun them for 1.5 seconds. No matter what. Okay, so that's pretty good. So usually you'll max this second or third. It just depends on sort of what you want to do. And we'll talk about the different options here in a second. But this is going to be one of your secondary maxes. Okay. Pillar of Flame, this is kind of his bread and butter spell. So this one cannot be blocked by people. It's just like a little circle that appears underneath them and explodes. And it's like after about a half a second delay, a little bit more, than the target blows up in flames. This can hit multiple people. It has a pretty good range of 900. So people can dodge it, so you want to make sure that you put this like right on top of them when you're going to cast it. It has a pretty long cooldown. Does decent magic damage, a little bit more as it scales than Seer, but it also costs a lot more mana. So Seer always costs 50. This can get up to 100. So this gets pretty expensive. This is one of your primary harassment tools. If you can't land the full combo, if you can at least land W's on people, it'll get them low. Now, if you can get them on fire first before you land this, then it does an additional 25% damage. And this is one of the main reasons why you max this first, because you get an extra 25% damage. So it's much better to have, you know, an extra 25% of 255 damage than an extra 25% of 75 damage. So that's why you don't max Q first most of the times, because this has the potential to get a much larger bonus if you're able to sequence your stuff optimally. Okay, then Conflag. This has been nerfed over time. I don't remember exactly how, but I'm pretty sure the range has been nerfed. So it only has 625 range, so this is pretty short range for a mage. Once you start getting into 625, it starts to get a little scary, but it costs a lot of mana and doesn't do very much damage. So if we look, it costs 70 mana at level 1, goes up to 90, but 70 at level 1 is huge for only 70 damage, and it only scales up to 150 total with a 0.35, so very, very little damage compared to other things. So the ideal combo that you would try to do to people is you Conflag them, and this one, if something's on fire, then it hits multiple targets, okay? But especially against single target, you would want to Conflag first, and then hit them with the stun off of Seer, so that they have to stand still, and then while they're stunned, then you hit them with the Pillar of the Flame. So that gives you the 3 ticks for this. You have the guaranteed first hit. You just have to hit the skill shot on the second hit, and then you're guaranteed to hit the third one, unless they have a Quicksilver Sash or something. So that's the best way to do it. The problem is a lot of times you can't get this close. It depends on the target, but sometimes it's dangerous to get this close. So you might have to go for Pillar first, just so you get them on fire, and then hit them with the Seer for the stun, and then you can walk up and conflag them while they're stunned. That's kind of the safer option. Now, obviously, you're losing the bonus 25% on Pillar of Flame if you do that, but it's a lot safer, and this is good harassment anyways. So if you miss your Q, it's kind of whatever. At least you landed some pretty good harassment. If you conflag first and then miss your Q, that's really inefficient. And it's just a lot more dangerous, like I said. So, the safest thing or the safest option is usually Pillar, then Q. If you land the Q, then walk up and conflag. You lose out on damage, but you get more consistency out of that. But the best, absolute highest damage version you can do is conflag, Seer, and then Pillar. Okay, and then you have his ultimate, which is Pyroclasm. So you throw it at a single target, and then it bounces around to nearby enemies up to 4 times, dealing magic damage. If a current target becomes invalid, so if it dies, then it selects a new one and still gets the maximum amount of bounces. If the initial target becomes invalid and there are no other targets, then it's cooldown. Now, it can be if they hourglass as well. So if you're throwing this at somebody who hourglasses, it should bounce to other people. However, if nobody else is around, then you get the cost and it resets the cooldown. So it can't miss, in other words. If someone gets hourglassed or whatever, it'll try to bounce around and find other targets. If there aren't other targets, then it will you'll get a refund for it. Now, it doesn't say what the priority on these bounces are. Let's see if it'll say it here. Okay. Prioritizes getting 3 blaze stacks on an enemy. Okay, so it will try to hit targets that are already ablaze. I think briefly slows enemies hit. So if someone is ablaze, then it slows them. It used to, I thought, speed up how fast it bounces. They've changed that a few different times. But okay, so now it slows targets if they get hit. Okay, so it can bounce to invisible things. You can't target them while they're invisible, but if it hits somebody, then it can bounce to, that invisible twitch or that invisible talent or whatever. That's possible. Okay. So, yeah, so it prioritizes people who already have blaze on them. But it can hit minions, too. So if you throw this... like into a minion wave, then you're going to lose a lot of damage potentially because the minions are going to soak some of these hits. So it can hit minions. It does not fully prioritize champions all the time. But if you do have blaze stacks on you, then it will prioritize you. Or the enemy, rather. Okay. So, the overall strategy then is, you just want to press up. Try to look scary. If you can get close enough to land the conflag safely, if you're against someone who's not going to be able to engage and fight you back, then you can, push them off. So if you're against like a Janna or something like that, then you might be able to go up and get a bit more aggressive with them. If you're against something like a Leona, you might have to be a bit more cautious, or a Thresh, you might have to be a bit more cautious. But now remember that conflag is also going to draw a minion aggro. So if you just walk up in the middle of a minion wave and try to conflag somebody, then it's going to draw aggro. So in general, you just want to step up, and then just as they're trying to last hit minions, and just hit them with some Pillars of Flame for the first couple of levels. And then once you're level 3, you can look for kills. He's best if you have someone else who can land a stun. So like if Jhin stuns them, or if they step on a Caitlyn trap, or maybe if Ashe or Varus slows them or something like that, then that can make it a little bit easier to hit your spells as well. But yeah, just go up, try to land your Pillar of Flames. Once you're level 3, you can look for possibly getting some kills. A lot of times, too, if you harass with Pillar, then that still leaves you the defensive tool of Conflag plus Seer. So if you harass with Pillar and then the Thresh tries to engage on you, you'll still have the E plus Q for the stun. So that's also another reason why just harassing with W is a pretty good option in lane. Or if the jungler comes running out, when you step up to harass, at least you'll have this to stun them, and maybe you can get away. Because this is your defensive tool too, is your E plus your Q. So you need to You have to be able to hit those with assassins or other people trying to run at you. You have to be able to hit that consistently. So yeah, that's his position, kind of early game bully. If you get ahead and snowball, you can definitely crush team fights later on. And yeah, does a ton of damage. If he doesn't snowball, if he falls behind early, it's really difficult to, get back into the game. I will say that even if you get caught in a team fight or they focus you out, a lot of times if you just throw Pyroclasm, you just press R on somebody, it'll still do a ton of damage in a fight. And so he does have that going for him, where he just kind of has this oh crap button where you're about to die and you just press Pyroclasm, in a team fight, and it still just kills everybody. So, if you get enough, targets that it can bounce to, then that's the thing. So that's probably why in Silver and Bronze, if people are just going to be caught out with mages and they're out of position all the time anyways, and they're just going to die in team fights, then just having a champion where you can just press R on somebody and just do a lot of damage in a fight, like it's not a skill shot, you just throw it on somebody and it just does a lot of damage, then that does make him more powerful than Zyra. Because with Zyra, you still need to be able to, cast your plants. So you need to be able to, like, EQ, WW, R. So you have to hit all these buttons, like 5 buttons to do your maximum damage in a fight, whereas Brand's like, click, 1 button. As he dies, his dying breath just cast Pyroclasm and probably get a triple kill. Then that does make Brand a little bit better at that kind of elo. Let's see... I don't think a lot of people were... Let me see if anyone's playing him. We got a little bit. Got a couple people toying around with him. So yeah, it looks like a lot of people are going Comet right now. Yeah, and they're pretty much going to builds, I think. Well, there are more people than I would suspect going Ludens, which is interesting. We'll talk about the itemization here in just a second, though. Yeah, that's sort of what he wants to do overall. So his strengths are he has a great kill threat in lane, very high area of effect damage, good single target stun, and his major weakness is he's really low on mobility. He's very easy to gank. His only defense is being able to hit him with the E plus Q stun. He's very skill shot dependent. If you don't hit that stun, you're going to have a bad time. If you don't hit your Ws, you're going to have a bad time. So he's a lot less consistent than Zyra in that respect, where Zyra can just, drop a Q plant on him, and even if you miss the Q, there's a good chance the plant's still going to hit him a couple of times. So you're going to get some very consistent damage there. And then the full combos require a lot of mana. So if you try to land, the full combo on somebody, then it costs a lot. Yeah, it's going to do a lot of damage, but, it's going to cost you at level 5, that's 130, 200 mana, right? Even just throwing your E plus Q, if you miss one of these, that's still 120 for the miss. Every time you throw one of these, it's 80 mana. So it gets pretty expensive pretty quickly with Brand. So you want to make sure that you're definitely hitting your combos if you want that to pay off. As far as best pairings, I think just with other people who can be very aggressive early and help you get kills, that's going to be your best bet. So Jhin and Draven are probably going to be your best options. Caitlyn's also good here. Just people who hit really hard, really early. Miss Fortune is another one who could be pretty good in theory. So Caitlyn, Miss Fortune, it's your typical early game suspects. Now, even someone like Tristana, if she can jump on them after you combo somebody, then that could potentially be pretty good too. That's a little more dangerous because Trist has to jump in for that, but it's pretty good. So Draven and Jhin are sort of your top-notch champions that you want to run with him, but you can run with other people too. I also have Ashe because at level 6, if she lands that arrow, that's pretty much guaranteed. You should get your combo if you're close by. You just EQW ult, and they're probably going to get exploded, so that's pretty good. Now, he's pretty good against, historically, tanks that don't have, like, very reliable engage, so like Tahm Kench, Thresh, and then Bard. Bard's not a tank, obviously, but Tahm Kench, Thresh. Now, when you look under, like, counters here, we've got, it says that he counters Tahm, Thresh, Malphite, Shen, so your usual suspects, Sion. Now, statistically, he does seem to counter Braum, but, like, in the laning phase, sure, but, like, after Braum, after you get your ult and Braum gets his shield, like, that could be a big problem. Because because the shield will block all of your Pyroclasm. It won't bounce to anybody else, so that's a really big problem. So I hesitate to call Braum a hard counter, but yeah, that is an option. So yeah, I think that like Tom, Thresh, Bard, Immobile, champions like that, it's a skill matchup against someone like a Zyra or a Fiddlesticks. Just who lands more of their stuff is going to be stronger. And then he's kind of weak against Enchanters, though. As you can see here, like his win rate goes down a little bit. Sona, Nami, Janna, stuff like that, just because they're going to outscale him. If you don't snowball, if you don't get really far ahead early on, then they could surpass you later. So that's potentially an issue. But you can blow them up early. So if you get ahead early, if you can really press that Janna and, you know, put a lot of kill threat on her early, then, you know, you definitely can snowball the game out of control. But if you just kind of sit there and don't hit a bunch of stuff and people are just farming off and she gets Redemption plus Locket, it's going to be really hard to deal with that. Okay, so we're going to move on and talk about recommended runes. I know this is weird in the middle of the guide, but I'm just going to take just 1 minute here and just drop by the bathroom really quick. So take a sip from your drink. We'll be right back, and then we're going to talk about recommended runes and items. So be back 30 seconds. Alright, sorry about that. That just kind of hit me out of nowhere. It's not a standard occurrence here. Usually I try to get my drink and bathroom out of the way before I start a video, but, you know, sometimes nature just hits you. You gotta deal with it, so we'll hop back on here. I'll see if I can find a way to edit that out. I don't usually edit a lot of videos, but we'll see what I have. Just because I don't have a ton of time to do that, but we'll see. So if it stays in there, sorry about that. I'll let you all know in the description. You can just kind of skip it, skip ahead a little bit, and not miss much. We'll see what we can do in terms of editing there. Okay, so recommended runes. Most people are going to go Comet, Mana Flow, Celerity, Scorch. This is pretty standard. Airy is an option. You know, as you can see, there are a couple of people that'll get Airy, like I said, because you can get multiple bounces. So sort of the decision here is Airy is a lot better early on because it's guaranteed damage and it can bounce multiple times off of your Blaze, potentially. But Comet is going to be much better later on in the game because it scales better with AP and it can hit multiple targets. Blaze also does reduce the cooldown of Comet. Now, as we scroll down, you'll see more and more people are running Airy, though. So it's about 50-50, actually. So it's kind of iffy. I think what it does come down to is Airy is more consistent early on, and Comet does more damage later. So it just depends on kind of what you want. Then everybody's going to take Resolve. as of patch 8.8, that might change in 8.9. They are nerfing Resolve again. They're nerfing Bone Plating and Chrysalis, which is what you get on him. Yeah, it's just always Bone Plating Chrysalis. And this is on most supports you run this right now as a secondary. So Chrysalis, Bone Plating, and then you have just your standard, like I said, Comet, Mana Flow, Celerity, Scorch. Now, another option that you don't see a lot of the pro people running that is a decent option in some circumstances is Taste of Blood and Genius Hunter. And the reason for this is this will give you a little bit more sustain, and this would be if you're not against an all-in lane, if you're just going to completely crush the lane, and you don't think you're going to need Bone Plating, so you're against like a Janna or a Tahm Kench or something like that. Taste of Blood does give you a little bit of sustain, and then Ingenious Hunter is useful if you want to go something like Twin Shadows or Shirelias. So that's going to hurt your damage a little bit, but at this actually quite a lot. It'll lower your damage. But if your team, like let's say you early pick Brand because you just want to play Brand for some reason, and the rest of your team just picks a ton of assassins, and your team already just has like a zillion damage, and you just want a bit more utility, you just want to be a bit safer, so you want that Shirelias, or you want the Twin Shadows to help get that slow on somebody to give you a much higher probability of landing your, WQE. That can be an option. It's rare. If you're not sure, just take this. Just take the Bone Plating Chrysalis. That'll give you sort of your best overall options, but this is something that in certain circumstances I think could be okay. As far as items go, you want to make sure that, well, let me look at runes. So other options, I mean, you might see people do Inspiration as a secondary. So they might go Inspiration and go something like Boot plus Cosmic Insight. I think we saw a couple Inspiration people here. Boots, Biscuits. The Biscuits do help you out with your mana a little bit in lane. I guess you can take Absolute Focus. I would still rather take Celerity. But free boots are nice. The thing about free boots, though, especially on AP mages, you really want to be able to get your sorcerer boots as fast as possible because you get the 18 spell penetration on that. So, it's a big damage source, and if you have magical footwear, then you're not going to be able to complete that. And you want to have that move speed as fast as possible with your tier 2 boots because you have no other escapes. So you just have to rely very heavily on move speed. So that's the problem with magical footwear is, on Janna, you can wait on boots for a long time because you have free movement off of your W. On Nami, you have ways to speed up. So in theory, you could, wait on your boots for magical footwear, and that would be fine. But, like, on someone like Brand or Zyra, you really, really want those sorcerer boots pretty quickly because it's damage and it's your survivability. So delaying them, unless you snowball really hard and get a lot of kills early, delaying them until, like, 9.5 minutes could be a problem potentially. So that's kind of an issue where it's really good, but it can also mess up your mojo a little bit as an AP support. But that is an option that's on the table. You could go Biscuits, you could go Cosmic Insight. Trying to think of other options. Now Chrysalis and Bone Plating are getting nerfed on the patch in 2 days from now. We'll have to run the numbers and see if it's worth it. They're basically, I think they're dropping the early damage block to 15 from 20, which is a big deal. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a 25% reduction in the damage reduction that you're going to have. And then Chrysalis, I think they're lowering the bonus health to 50 early on. So we'll see. If they do that, then Inspiration might become the standard where you just go, like I said, footwear into something else. Domination does have some options. It's a shame because they are moving Ultimate Hat into like Ultimate Hunter down here, so that you get a lower cooldown on your ult. Which I really wish. I thought they were going to put it somewhere in the tier 2, which would have been awesome. Because then you could have gone like Ultimate Hat plus Ingenious Hunter and just get all of this, like more ultimates, more spell casts and things like that, and that would have been great. I haven't tried this, but, I could see an option where maybe Presence of Mind plus Coup de Grace could be a thing. The problem is if you go for this as your secondary, I think you get attack speed. So here you're getting health as your secondary, which is important to recognize. You're getting health as your secondary. If you pick inspiration, you're getting extra AP because sorcery is your primary. If you go over here, you're getting extra AP, or you're getting extra attack speed, which really doesn't do a lot for you. So I don't know. This is very interesting. It just feels like it's really weird to put into this tree. Like they're trying to pull non-marksman over into this tree to give them some options, but it just seems weird. But yeah, coup de grace in general, you know, that plus either triumph or presence of mind, I suppose could be an option because he is kind of mana hungry in fights, and you do have a high impact ult, but it's already on a pretty low cooldown, I think. So I'm just kind of brainstorming here. Yeah, it's already on a super low cooldown. I don't know. That's weird. Like, you probably won't do that. It's a little on the weird side, but if you want to try it out, like, Presence of Mind, Coup de Grace could be a thing. Like I said, Taste of Blood, Ingenious Hunter, in the right circumstances can be interesting, but your standard right now is going to be Bone Plating Chrysalis. If the nerf ends up being a little too tough early on, then you might go something like Footwear, Cosmic Insight, or Footwear, Biscuits. I suspect people will still want Bone Plating Chrysalis for trading in lane, but there's always, you know, a chance that people could do something else instead. Some people have asked about, like, Electrocute on brand before. I mean, that does fit the hit 3 abilities type of thing, but the thing is, like, Cheap Shot's not that great on him. I guess you'd have to go, like, Electrocute. I guess you could do something like Electrocute, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ingenious Hunter, or the new ulti hat thing that's going to be here if you want that. And then as your secondaries over here, I would probably just go Mana Flow, Band Celerity. I suppose that's an option if you want to, you know, not go Comet and go Electrocute instead. That's probably viable. Like, you'd be losing out on Scorch, but I don't know. I mean, that's the standard, pretty much. Everybody goes just kind of Comet down there. Is that right, Rory? You want to show up in a video? You just wake up and show up in front of the camera?
It's the Pink Power Ranger.
It's a Pink Power Ranger outfit.
She doesn't look very happy.
Are you happy, Rory?
This Pink Power Ranger looks
I can't see your face.
Sleepy.
Are you sleepy, Rory?
Yeah. She's had a long day of fighting crime.
Fighting evil things.
Yeah, I don't recall much about the Power Rangers.
I see.
Except the pink one was a girl.
That's right.
The
Pink one was a girl.
Asian.
Yeah, and then there's a yellow.
Wasn't there a black one who was black?
Yeah, there's a guy. That was the... I think he was a black Power Ranger that was black. It was African American, yeah.
The yellow Power Ranger was Asian.
Yeah. It was multicultural, but it was also kind of racist.
Yeah, I mean, it was the 80s. I guess they were...
90s.
90s. They were doing the best they could at the time.
That's right. They were trying.
They were trying.
Right,
they were trying.
And then there was the green one / the white one. The hot one. Tommy. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, a few different options in there if you want to play around with some different runes, but it's, you know, 90% of the time or more you should just be going this. Okay, as far as recommended items go, you know, you want to go Frostfang early. I've actually heard people suggest maybe Coin. Frostfang does give you more AP. Coin is more consistent gold. It does give you movement speed, and it assures that you're going to get your wards early. The problem is if you get camped early with Frostfang, you're not going to get your wards until like 15 to 20 minutes. Or if your 80 carry is just a total turkey and it's not helping you like harass at all, and you're just sitting there farming and you're just not able to land a lot of your spells, then Frostfang's going to be kind of worthless. So if you find yourself like, if you try out Frostfang, that should be the default. If you try out Frostfang and you find yourself not getting wards until like over 15 minutes each time, then try out Coin and see what you think. You do lose a little bit of early game damage, but you do get the extra gold so that you can complete your Leontries and Rylais faster, which is definitely something to consider. And you're going to have more wards so that it's less likely that you're going to get ganked. and you can protect dragons and things like that better. And the fact that you have that extra 10 movement speed. People forget that Nomad's Medallion got buffed to give that 10 movement speed. Then that helps keep you free from ganks, helps you get into position to land your combos faster and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I think that almost everybody at the pro level is going to run Frostfang, and everyone's going to tell you to run Frostfang on brand, but I think, seriously, there could be a conversation for running Nomad's Medallion on him if you find yourself not getting your wards on time early on. So, it's up to you. But I do think that damaging spells and attacks. Now, I'm not sure if one spell, because they've changed this over time, because it used to be that Morgana could, like, trigger all 3 Frostfang stacks basically instantly. It says damaging spells and attacks. So I don't know if you hit them with 1 W, if your passive ticks several times, if it would trigger this each tick. I don't think so, though. I think you have to hit them with a new spell and a new attack. I think they changed that about Morgana, because it used to be the same thing with Morgana. Although I do think that each one of Zyra's plants' attack does count. So I don't know if each burn from your passive would count as well. But try it out, see what you think. I think Frostfang is still the standard on most people because you need to snowball early, and, you know, just having that extra AP and that extra 18 on hit damage is a big deal. But, you know, maybe Coin could be in the conversation. Now, Leandries is what you want to run early on. I know there were some people debating, well, wasn't this nerfed or whatever? No, it wasn't. It's still very, very strong. So you want to get this. It does give you an extra 10% damage once you get it stacked up. You know, a lot of times, you're going to have time to stack this up anyways for a little bit. 1 stack every second for the next 4 seconds. Increased damage for each stack. Okay. So if you damage multiple enemies, it doesn't stack any faster. You have to wait up to 4 seconds. But you're waiting on your, the explosion from your, the second part of your passive is what does a lot of your damage anyway. So you have to wait on that to kick in anyways. So Madness is pretty strong. And then it's 3% of the target's max health as bonus magic damage. Each tick applying every 0.5 seconds. So, and it gets doubled against slowed or immobilized targets. So, you know, so basically you get a free 4 seconds of this off of your passive. So instead of just lasting for 3 seconds, it really lasts for 7 seconds because it's going to refresh the duration every single tick of that. So it's really, really effective with Brand. So you want to rush this, you know, almost every single time you rush this ASAP. Rylai's is the other one that's extremely good because your burn is going to apply the slow. So it's damaging people with ability. So it's going to keep them slow for the entire 4 seconds for 20%. And it's going to proc the extra damage off of Leandries for each one of those stacks. So I think that's pretty massive. They did just buff this a little bit too to give it an extra 90 ability power, which is nice. Or not extra, an extra 5 for a total of 90. Which is really nice. It used to be 70, and then I think they gave it like plus 15, and they just gave it another 5. Or no, it was 75. They gave it 10, and then they just gave it another 5. So they definitely buffing that up. So it's not like, in theory, the most efficient thing in the world, but when you combine it with Leandries, when you're getting that double damage, it's an extremely, like, lot of damage, right? So it's very good. And then if you hit someone with your E, they're going to be slowed. It makes it much easier to land your Q for the full combo. So this is just like peanut butter and jelly. You definitely want to run that with Brand, Leandry, Rylai, and then the next big item that you want is Void Staff. If you get to that point. Usually, most games will end when you get to Leandry plus Rylai's, or sometimes even Leandry's, and just like a piece of Rylai's, because these are expensive items for supports. If you're buying a lot of control wards and boots and all that kind of stuff. And you always want to run Sorcerer boots. So Void Staff is really good because it gives that spell penetration. I would even prefer Void Staff over Death Cap most of the time because he doesn't have great AP ratios, remember. And also remember that Void Staff applies the extra damage from Leandri's. You get more damage off of that from Void Staff. So Leandri's has no AP ratio on it, right? Unlike Protobelt or something like that, which has an AP ratio. This has no AP ratio. So it gets 0 scaling off of AP, but it does percentage max health, so it gets a huge amount of advantage off of Void Staff. So that's something to keep in mind, just like Brand's passive. So Void Staff, very, very good. Spell penetration, very, very good on Brand. Now, something else I didn't mention here is Morellonomicon. So the Leandri's versus Morello is kind of a tough call for a lot of people because some people like the Touch of Death off of the Oblivion Orb. They are similar. This is similar to like Rylai's in terms of efficiency. Like it looks good. It's got the 80 ability power. It's got the 300 health, right? So same thing. But these passives here are so much stronger than 15 spell pen. Like that Torment passive is an astronomical amount of extra damage. I'm telling you, I've done the math in past videos. If you're curious about that, check out a guide on the channel I have. It's like in-depth analysis of AP items. Leandri's is so strong, so I really, really wouldn't rush Morellonomicon unless I don't even know. Like get it. This right here, the 15 magic damage, like right when you complete Oblivion Orb, is very good. But the problem is Oblivion Orb is going to delay your build into Leandri's. Now I've thought about a build where you just go like Oblivion Orb and then the Mask Haunting Guys, but by that point you could have just bought Leandri's. And it would be much more efficient to just go ahead and buy the Leandri's for that price, because they're like 1,500 each, I think. Yeah, so it'd be 3,000 for this, and you'd get a total of, what, 60 ability power off of it, 400 health. Then you get Madness and 15 spell pen. But this is way more valuable than 15 spell pen, and you would get an extra 20 ability power off of it. So it's better just to complete Leandri's most of the time. But you can get a Morello after you finish. I think that Rylai's, if you're going to get Leandri's, Rylai's is a better deal than Morellonomicon as well. It's very cheap. It's 2,600. Really powerful. And then you could get a Morellonomicon after that if you want. But at that point, Void Staff is probably going to be a lot stronger because you're going to have the Rylai's plus Leandri's combo with his ultimate going off. And so you're going to have all this percentage damage. And so Void Staff's going to be a lot more than Flat Pen, because Flat Pen is usually best like early on in the game before people get a lot of extra penetration. So Morello is like an item that you really want to rush if you're going to get it, but it's so much worse than Leandri's is most of the time. So it just gets kind of crowded out in most games. You could get it after Void Staff if you want to, but most games will not go this long. But that is an option, so I would not rush that item. I think there are maybe a couple of people who get this item. There are some people getting Ludens, I guess. I haven't really tried this build out. Like, it gives you a lot of mana and 20% CDR, but you're losing out a lot on Morellonomicon. I mean, maybe this lets you harass a little bit earlier on because you're going to get the component piece that gives you the mana regen, but it's iffy. This Promisk is doing it. I don't see a lot of other people doing it, though. Now, this person, Rosie, ended up going for probably Leandri, Morello, Void, so he just skipped Rylai's. There are some different builds in here, but I think that mathematically, you know, if you're not going for Rylai's, Leandri's, and then Rylai's, you're really missing out on a lot of opportunities. Missed out on a lot of damage. Some people go for this Twin Shadows sometimes. But you can see there's a lot of Haunting Guises, a lot of Leontries, and a lot of Rylais here, with just a sprinkle of this one guy, Prometheus, who likes to run Ludens. Now, Zhonya's is interesting. You really don't want to get that unless it's out of necessity. If they have, like, a fed AD assassin that keeps focus firing you, yeah, like right here, this is why Aphromu got it. He didn't just randomly get Zhonya's. He got it because they probably had a really dangerous Rengar or Fizz. Zhonya's works pretty good if you get hit with a Fizz fish as well. So that's why he got it, is out of necessity, and he was losing, and he just wanted to stop dying because he was dying a lot. He had 9 deaths. So that's something he got at the very end of the game because he was just getting walloped. So sometimes you can, you know, have to switch your build up. If they have a lot of fed assassins, you're going to have to switch it up and do something else, but yeah. Anyways, I think that's going to be the standard build, and then you can go the Twin Shadow Shrelia for the utility if you want to, but once again, you're sacrificing a lot of damage, so just make sure your team has enough damage if you want to do that. Okay, but that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this. Sorry for the restroom break. It just kind of, you know, it just happens sometimes. So, like I said, I'll see if I can edit that out. If I can't, you know, I'll have timestamps in the description. I'll let you know when there's going to be that restroom break, and y'all can just, you know, skip ahead for however long that took, like 1 minute or something. But, yeah, Brand, pretty good choice. If you, especially, the lower the elo goes, the better he's going to be, because people are going to be much more susceptible to getting hit by that skill shots. They're going to clump up for fights and not spread out for his ultimate and all that kind of stuff. So he really is someone you can use to exploit the mispositionings of people in bronze, silver, and probably up into gold, and then he starts to fall off a little bit into platinum plus, but he's still, you know, pretty viable. Some people are even playing him at the highest levels. You know, 49% is not terrible. It's close to 50%, so he still is pretty viable as you move your way up. But yeah, that's going to be it. Thank you very much, and special thanks to Christoph once again for sponsoring this. And have a good day. I'll see everybody next time.